Hi, guys. Today we are going to talk about physical and chemical changes. So, we've already talked about matter and we've talked about the two different types of matter. We've talked about pure substances and mixtures. As a reminder, a mixture is when two or more substances are put together and they can be separated. So that's like when you have Chex Mix and you have the pretzels and the nasty little Chex cereal together. Or when you have another type of mixture would be if you are making like Kool-Aid and you mix the sugar and the water and the Kool-Aid powder, that is also a mixture. Another type of matter would be our pure substance. Our two types of pure substances are an element and a compound. Remember, an element is an atom. It's just one thing. It's the smallest unit of matter, an atom is. And a pure substance, another example of that is a compound. A compound is one or more atom that is bound together. You cannot undo a compound. That's the smallest unit. It's like a ratio. So if you imagine water, water is made up of H2O. So it's 2 hydrogen for every 1 oxygen. And if you pick up a scoop of water, it looks the same everywhere. And you can't break it apart and say, oh, this is where the hydrogen are, this is where the oxygen are. It's a pure substance. But today we're going to talk about physical and chemical changes. But first, we have to talk about what is a physical property. So I hope you know what the word physical means. Physical is something that can be observed without changing the identity of the substance. A property is something that is special or unique to that object. So, for instance, some examples are going to be the boiling point and melting point. So, we know that the boiling point of water is 100 degrees Fahrenheit. We know the melting point of water. We can look at something and observe the color. We can look and observe the density. We will talk more about density later on. Density is a physical property. It talks about how much mass something is per unit of volume. We can also look and see if something conducts heat or conducts electricity. Another thing would be if it's malleable. So if we can bend it. A lot of times metal is very malleable. When you bend it, it takes and keeps its shape. Another thing is ductile. That's the ability to be made into wires. If you've ever taken your phone charger and pulled the plastic off of it, you can look inside of the wire and it's always metal because metal is a great, first off, conductor of electricity, which is a great physical property. And it's also ductile because it can be made into wires. So now that we've covered physical properties, we're going to look at chemical properties. So, chemical properties are a little bit harder to talk about and see. The first one would be how it reacts with chemicals. So, if I look at two chemicals together, what do I see? Do they create bubbles? Does something happen? So, that would be a chemical property. Another chemical property would be the pH. Something's acidic or, like me, basic. So the pH, we say the scale, it's 1 to 14. 1 to 7 is very acidic, the lower the number, the more acidic, and the higher the number, the more basic it is. Another example of a chemical property would be oxidation. Oxidation is the interaction with oxygen. That is like when things rust. So if you've ever left your bike outside or if you've ever noticed an old car that's been outside for a long time underneath the car, the metal is often oxidized, it's often rusty. Another example is flammability. So if it's flammable. So a chemical property is something you can see if if it can't be undone. So a chemical property is something that's kind of more permanent than a physical property. Now that we've covered the properties, we're going to talk about changes. So a physical change does not change the type of matter. So we're not going to change the atoms. So that's going to be a change in density, the state. So that's not where it's located. That's the liquid, the gas, or the solid. We can change the color, the shape, the size. Another example would be if it's boiling, freezing, dissolving, making a mixture, anything that can be physically separated. I'm sorry, it's kind of cut off at the bottom. All right, I hope you guys are still with me, still focusing and listening. I'm really hoping that there's no side conversations. I'm assuming I don't have to give any restorative conversations. I'm looking at you in the back. Focusing, yeah? Okay, ready to move on? All right, chemical changes. Changes that cannot be undone. This is once it happens, and no takesy backsies. So the first thing we need to know is the evidence of a change. So if we're having a chemical change, there's going to be a formation of a gas or a liquid. So you'll see bubbles, or you might see, oh, I have to change this. I'm sorry. It's not going to be a formation of a liquid. Everyone put vote +1 on your notes or your next assignment. I made an error. I caught it. Formation of a gas or of a solid. The next would be a change in color. If there's a reaction, you guys are going to hopefully soon we'll be back in class and we can do these fun labs. Otherwise, I don't know what we're going to do, but there's fun labs that we do this where we can see chemical reactions. Another is a change in energy. So if you've ever used one of those hot packs when you're cold, and when you crack them and you break them, they warm up. That's an exothermic reaction. It releases heat. Another example of this is those ice packs that I have in my room that work for about 3 seconds. When you break them, when you crack them, they are endothermic. They absorb heat. And I know you're thinking like, it gets cold. Well, it's absorbing heat. It's taking heat away from the surroundings, so it makes it feel really cold. So there's endothermic and exothermic. When we're in chemistry, we don't really talk about coldness as a thing. Coldness is just the absence of heat. Because as a side tangent, you guys know I never go on side tangents, so I promise I'll keep this one quick. Heat is the movement of particles. So heat is a kinetic energy. So if you were with me at the beginning of the year when we talked about kinetic and potential energy, kinetic energy is the movement of atoms or the movement of anything. So heat is the movement of atoms at a molecular level moving really, really, really fast or really, really, really slowly. So heat and temperature have to do with how fast particles are moving. So we can't say something's cold because particles are still moving. There's still a heat about them. It's just more or less heat. So in science and chemistry, we don't really use the word cold. It's just releasing or absorbing heat. All right, I'll get back on with the PowerPoint because I'm sure you guys fast forwarded that. You're like, up, tangent. I want to skip Miss H talking, which I'm sure some of you did, but back to the notes. So here's some examples, and here's the really, really important thing, the photo that I will show you. So examples that you would know in your body: digestion, respiration, photosynthesis, burning. Respiration, think about this is more of a biology term. This isn't just this isn't breathing. This is cellular respiration. This isn't inhale, exhale. This is the breaking down of glucose by the mitochondria. So if we look at this photo right here, atoms of element X and atoms of element Y. So this is our hydrogen, this is our oxygen, and this is our water. So when we have hydrogen combining with oxygen, we're making a new substance. We are rearranging our atoms and chemically changing them. This is really important to remember as well. We are not creating or destroying atoms. We are not ruining the universal balance. This is really important to remember that atoms, matter, and energy cannot be created or destroyed. We already learned last semester that energy cannot be created or destroyed, while matter can also not be created or destroyed. So the atoms are only rearranged. This is it that I have for you guys. This is chemical and physical change, as well as chemical and physical properties. So remember, is a property is something that you observe, and a change is when you start with one thing and you end with another. A physical property or change is something that you observe and you still have at the end. So imagine a physical change is like an ice cube melting from solid to liquid. It's still water no matter what you have, but a chemical change would be like baking a cake, right? You have flour, eggs, milk, sugar. When you mix all of those individual things up and put them together, that cake, you can't undo it. You can't magically have the flour and eggs back out. All right, if you guys have any questions and need to know more, feel free to shoot me an email. But we are going to go over some chemical and physical changes with your worksheet that you have coming up. All right, we will go through that shortly. Bye bye.